Oh, is there something to talk about this week? Yeah, we're doing this even a little earlier because Devin was in Charlotte for the 600. I watched racing for 14 hours Sunday like a lot of you. Dan's got a lot of insights. We're going to break down the biggest day in motorsports and preview NASCAR's trip to Nashville. All here on 5 to Go. All right, come on, jump in. We got the Hot Rod Lincoln fired up here on Monday night, Memorial Day night. As we think about the people that have laid their lives down for this country, we are going to jump in and talk about motorsports here. And after almost 24 hours to digest a couple of epic races and another one that has a lot of prestige but was not so epic, that being F1, welcome to 5 to Go podcast here, episode 315. So glad that you can join us here on GoPRN.com, on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us, it's either on Spotify or on my YouTube channel. We're so glad you're here. I'm your co-host, Doug Turnbull, from the Performance Racing Network, though I was not part of the announcing team this weekend. They did a whale of a job. I have been a pit road reporter twice in the Coke 600, and although it's nothing like driving a car or being a crew member, certainly just being engaged for that long is it takes a modicum of endurance there. So I feel it, but for the whole pit road crew there, and of course Brad Gilliam, Mark Garrow in the booth, and our turn announcers, what a great job by PRN and what a great job by Amazon Prime. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment as Ross Chastain gets his first win of the season there. It does it in epic fashion over the race dominator William Byron, who had won the first three stages, led 283 laps, and finished second place at his home track. Byron, the winner of the Xfinity race the day before. So much to get into there. Of course, we'll talk about the Xfinity race for a bit, the truck race for a bit, the Indy 500, F1 Monaco, but we need to get into it. First off, he, and by very literally, our roving racing journo this weekend, he went from Chattanooga covering softball at University of North Georgia, surprised me with a picture from the front row of the media center on Sunday. He was at Charlotte on Sunday only, but he saw the best race of the three all weekend too. Epic fashion. He's got watermelon high, Busch Light buzz. It's Devin Kupka. How you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing good. I am currently very tired right now, and I tried. I got home around 5, and we're taping this at 7, so I've been home for about 2 hours now. Ate dinner and tried taking a nap, but man, I am one tired man right now. But
we're not going to keep you forever tonight, bro. But I just thank you for. I just thought this would be. I don't know. It's fresh. Like you just come off the road. I feel like there's something about like the race is still vibing, I guess.
I pulled a 600 of my own.
Yeah. So what was your you live in Cumming, Georgia. That's about a half hour north of Atlanta. You went let's connect the dots real quick. Don't give all the roads and stuff. Just where'd you go?
Well, let's see. It started off on Wednesday morning. I got up, packed, and then actually, no, I got up, wrote a preview article for the National Championship Series for softball, then packed.
UNG Vanguard.
Yep, UNG Vanguard, and then went to Culver's to go work at 10:30 to 9 Wednesday. Got off of work at 9, drove directly to Chattanooga. Then I was in Chattanooga for a couple of days. Huh?
On Wednesday night after working 9.5 hours.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't have to deal with the stress of the next morning to get to the venue or whatnot. But Chattanooga for a couple of days, North Georgia softball did not win a game in a double elimination. It was the top 8 teams in the country. They lost to Saginaw Valley State on Thursday. Then they had to play again Saturday, which then they lost that first game of the day Saturday to not Saginaw to Valley State, but to Western Washington. So the season effectively came to an end for them. You know, props to Brooke O'Hare and that team and that program this year for what they did. It's been quite an adjustment year for that program, you know, having a coach leave midway through the offseason, but to be able to get back to the national championship series for the first time in 2 years with a new head coach is pretty impressive, especially with a roster that turned over a lot in the offseason. So big props to them. So they lost on Saturday. I got out of the venue around 2:30 in Chattanooga, and I booked a direct line to Charlotte. Took 75 to 85, and then I didn't make a pit stop until I got almost to North Carolina. When I took a long pit stop at Denny's, and there's only one waitress there, but got to my hotel in Charlotte, and pulled a 600 of my own, and it just felt weird when I arrived at the track yesterday because it just was like, especially for these media deals, because normally I'm there the whole weekend. It's not like I'm going to the track as a fan or anything like that, but it just felt like I missed a lot. That's what it felt like. And then I walked in and I'm front row in the media center, which was kind of surprising, honestly, because I don't think I've ever been that close, except for the Brickyard 400. But that's because I got there super early last year.
Well,
But
I mean, but when the race is at night, and I mean, you can just go grab a seat if they have unassigned seating. I guess that's, people
I
want to watch F1 in the morning. They want to watch Indy. There's nothing going on at the track until at least lunchtime, right? So
yeah, I watched a little bit of Monaco in my hotel room Sunday morning, and then I went to I I ate lunch in the Concord Mills area, so I went there, and then I went to the track around 1:30 and watched the Indy 500, and then doing the our pre-race report there on the Five to Go Facebook page, which I was able to put together pretty quickly. So,
yeah,
um,
incredible.
yeah, there's just this template I work with, and luckily I was able to get it to work with me yesterday. So that turned out well. But everything just kind of happened in quick order. It just felt so odd only being there for that one day, feeling like okay, I
Yeah,
missed practice and all that. It just felt
yeah.
kind of odd.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about the vibe and the energy there in Charlotte on Sunday, too. That's how I felt going to the Brickyard 400 last year, where I had my flight get canceled Friday night. I was already going to have a short weekend just being there Saturday and Sunday, but, really not being there until Sunday during the day. That was, you just kind of go, okay, I got a job to do. You don't have a chance to soak it in. But, man, you did a great job. A lot of great, especially post-race content. We're going to play a little bit of that here with some of the other top 5 finishers besides Ross Chastain here in just a moment. All right. It's 6.5 minutes in. We haven't heard from the master maker of speed yet. The guy that grinds those gears at the Dawsonville garage joined us on a beautiful evening in Dawsonville, Georgia. 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame inductee and master championship mechanic Dan Elliott. How you doing, buddy? And what'd you
Doing
think?
good. Hope everybody is well. Hope your holiday weekend has gone well, and hope everyone is safe. And yeah, we've definitely had racing this weekend and plenty to talk about.
For sure. I got to say, when the race was over late Sunday night, I posted on X. I said, I've been watching racing pretty much for 14 hours, and I'm ready for another one. That's what I was like, man, let's go. I was ready for something. I don't know, short track or whatever. I guess I could have put on the Earnhardt documentary, but I had something to watch because Prime, doing their first ever NASCAR race, had a 1 hour post race show that went past midnight. Danielle Trotta, Corey LaJoy, Carl Edwards. Okay, 3 people I wouldn't have. If you told me before they made this announcement, okay, about Prime, like, hey, there's going to be a post race show somewhere. Danielle Trotta, who wasn't doing TV anymore, Carl Edwards, who never went to the racetrack, and Corey LaJoy, who was a full time Cup driver, I would have said, yeah, okay, I would take the under on that. And man, they had a post race show. I was not sitting there waiting for the teardown to come out, which didn't get recorded, that podcast, Jeff Gluck, Jordan Bianchi, till today. I wasn't waiting for Inside the Race, hosted by Steve Letarte, who was in the booth until late at night, and on that post-race show, who joined Dale Jr. and the rest on there. I had it. I actually had a real post-race show. They could have talked to more drivers, but that was awesome. So I was geeked up about it. So let's just go, I guess, in maybe descending order, if you will. Okay, there we go.
That's the stage they had on the post race show. It's an actual full on studio set, or not studio set, but they'd have it at some big events. So I thought that was pretty cool. Because as you were bringing up the post race show, I thought I'd pull up this picture I snapped last night.
Well, that's good. And they had elements in that. Now, did they move that thing around, or did it stay in the same spot?
So they moved it. It was on the front stretch for pre-race, and then they moved it to a somewhat built stage because it's a portable. I forget. I should have asked somebody what the term is because they use this for their Thursday night football sets as well.
But it's like a semi-portable thing. Yeah,
it's like a portable set.
Yeah,
but they put it on a ramp though, or no, they put it on a somewhat pre-built stage for the post-race show. So it was pretty cool though.
Mobile set anyway.
Yeah, and it's similar to what NASCAR does actually on the front stretch of races for driver intros of the concerts and everything. They have these things that fold up into tractor trailers and just drive off. It's pretty incredible. So that set, though, they had the element of the speed stage, all right? Fans surrounding it, I mean, just going nuts in the background and all that stuff. I mean, that was really cool to see that in the pre-race show. And the pre-race, again, was Trotta, Edwards, LaJoy, and then interviewed a bunch of drivers and had a lot of great features on that as well. I've got to say, Fox did a great job covering the Indy 500 too, and I think that made NASCAR Nation a little bitter in the mouth, so to speak, because you're like, wow, you're treating this race with gravity. Why don't you treat NASCAR the same way? There you go. Okay. And so that's what it looked like pre-race.
Yes, that was on the front stretch there, but they did have that kind of element there with the fans gathering, and I think that's something that's been missing in NASCAR over the past couple of years is getting it in with the fans, and not just having the pre-race show on the grid somewhere kind of tucked away.
Well, no, that's great. And I mean, again, the speed stage, that was for the multi-weekend or multiple programs during the racing weekend. For those that don't know, back in the 2000s, up until about 2013 or so, when Speed Channel became FS1. But then it cost a ton of money. Kenny Wallace has talked about this. Cost a ton of money to do that. And they did it out with major activation, sponsored by Home Depot, just like College Game Day is, out in the fan zone. You know, this is a little different being inside. Not everybody could get on the front stretch. But seeing, and people that are listening couldn't see, if you didn't see the race or didn't see that part of it, people were lined up rows deep behind the commentators, just yelling and carrying on and having a good time. I prefer to be there in the snake pit myself, but hey, that's what that's it. Let's get into the race, though. So Prime did an excellent job. Had Dale Jr., Steve Letarte, Adam Alexander in the booth. I was on the Pit Reporters about a month ago on PRN with Adam Alexander, and I actually texted with him this today after the race, just because I'd never really been in touch with him before except on that show, but I had his information from doing that show and just said, dude, y'all killed a great job, and he said thank you, because I think there was a lot of expectation placed on that, just like there has been the CW. And if I'm Adam Alexander, those are the gigs you want, is to be the first jumping in doing these, right? Which he hasn't really been, I don't think, but then starting with the CW, he has been. He's helping build it from the ground up. All right, so the race really went like, and I want to get Devin's impressions first. William Byron dominated and had different people taking a bite at the apple, but it was always the Exalta 24 up front. Byron, when you lead 283 laps, you look at that and you go, my first impression is, okay, what late caution caused that? How in the world did they lose that? And I really think, Devin, William Byron's handle just started to fall off a little bit at the very end. And Ross Chastain, and he got in lap traffic. Joey Logano in the news again. He gets in lap traffic. Joey Logano, the win. This shows how it could change week to week in this tight parity of the Cup Series. The winner, or the second place finisher, all-star race a week ago, Joey Logano, out to lunch all day at the 600. And he's getting lapped. He was never a factor in anything on Sunday. Here comes William Byron. Gets, the dynamics change behind him. Ross Chastain catches him. Other people that had been contenders, Denny Hamlin, not enough fuel on the final pit stop, which you just don't see that much anymore. They couldn't get that second cam plugged in. He has to pit with 14 laps to go or so. Tyler Reddick had been a big player in the front. He had a pit road speedy. He had some kind of pit road penalty late in the race, and then he almost crashed right in front of William Byron as he was lapping him too. Actually, did really crash. He finished way back. Other people that were up there near the front couldn't get him. And here comes Ross Chastain, who became the first person, Devin, since when? Yeah, you had this in your post-race video. It was like Richmond 1969 or 1972.
Yeah, it was like Richmond, and it was in the early 70s, like around 1972. I forget.
I think it was Bobby Allison. I think they just said it on Prime. Bobby, the first person to start dead last in a race in over 50 years since Bobby Allison to win the darn thing, and that was Ross Chastain there, and car number one, who took the lead. And let me see here, what about 8 laps to go. And he does that in the jockey car, not the Busch Light car this time around. And he takes the Coca-Cola 600. So, Devin, you were there, the post-race deal. Go to our 5 to Go Facebook page video. You're holding an empty Busch Light can and a piece of that very watermelon he smashed on the front straightaway in your stand-up that you did there. What were those moments after the race like being there in person?
Well, I will say one thing I noticed after he won the race when he was on the front stretch is hearing the roar of the crowd. Hey there, props to wearing the Watermelon Man T-shirt. The closest thing I have is, I have a Busch Light shirt, but the closest thing I have is this Budweiser Anheuser-Busch. I'm keeping it in the family.
And you know what? Dan could just go, that's great, guys. What do I have? A Hall of Fame inductee T-shirt. So kiss it. That's what Dan's saying. But no, so Devin, you were there. Okay.
But yeah, I thought the roar of the fans was quite incredible. It shows how popular of a driver Ross Chastain is. And really, he earned that victory there, overtaking William Byron. I couldn't get that in my vocabulary last night because it's just like I don't know. I was so focused on other sports that are not motor sports. I was using other terms and whatnot, but overtaking.
Overtaking, a little open wheel action there.
Yeah. Well, he had two open wheel races to begin the day.
Yeah.
But no, but it was cool to see him do that at the end of the race. That was big for him. First regular season Cup win since he last won it in Nashville 2 years ago. So now he's locked into the playoffs.
Regular season, yeah.
Yep.
He last won in Kansas in the fall. But
yep.
First regular season win since Nashville a year ago. He's been kind of, and then he won Phoenix, right? When Blaney won the championship, he won Phoenix. So, yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Almost 2 years since he won in the regular season.
But yeah, it's a big win for that organization, for a team that seems like it's been struggling since last year, because you had Daniel Suarez pick up that win at Atlanta last year, early in the year, and then you really just didn't have a whole lot from Trackhouse the rest of the season. So that was big for them. And, big win to add to his career. And he's won at least one race for 4 seasons now, 22, 3, and 4, 5. So 4th consecutive season now. He just keeps on adding those wins, and it's just fascinating to see the evolution of where he's come from, the JD Motorsports days to Chip Ganassi to Trackhouse Racing. I think it's really cool to see that path, and he's the I guess you could say the working man in the Cup Series right now. I mean, he's a watermelon farmer. I mentioned the protect your melon, all that stuff. So
eighth generation watermelon farmer. All right, 8th generation. I mean, he's all about it. Of course, I mean, you're not going to be on the farm as much these days as before, but he does give you those, in a way, those don't crucify me, NASCAR Nation, all right, but he gives me the Earnhardt vibes in the sense of trial and error, and then and he still has a down-to-earthness he projects as well. And it's hard to say that anybody – that anybody born after like 1980 or something would give you Earnhardt vibes, okay? But like, it's just he does have that sense. And then, of course, the intimidator factor. What did you think, Dan? All right, to you now, because Devin was there. Dan, what did you think about the move that Chastain pulled with a few laps to go? He said after the race that his spotter, Brandon McReynolds, Larry's son, did not clear him. He dove under Byron, and there was a percentage chance he wasn't going to make it. What did you think of that?
I think that was talking about your Earnhardt type move. Definitely, that was the move, because this was William Byron's race to lose, and I think that move right there was a very aggressive move that Chastain made. But he was like comparing Earnhardt. That's the kind of move you'd see Earnhardt make. And it was a successful move. It wouldn't have taken very much at all for that to have been a very unsuccessful move.
Yeah.
And he eked through there,
right.
but that was
Chase Briscoe winning his first race at Gibbs, who finished 3rd in that race.
Yeah, yes. But had he not made that move, the outcome would have been, I think Byron would have been able to have kept clean air and held him at bay.
Well, for sure. And Byron, I was on a text thread with some other people that love racing, and some of them have money on Byron. They're getting all mad and stuff like that, and saying he freaked out around lap cars. But we saw it throughout the race. Byron's car would come and go, especially on longer runs. And there were some times where he did stretch it out. There was a point where he was winning by 9 seconds. But
look at his points. Look at his points for the evening. What he accumulated.
15 more points than Chastain.
Yep.
65 points for winning all 3 stages. He did not get the fastest lap. Denny Hamlin got that, I believe. But he got all 3 stages won and finished 2nd in the race. But he's not thinking about points. It kind of feels like a long time ago. But William Byron hasn't won in 3.5 months in the Cup Series. He won the Daytona 500 in mid-February, and here we are. It's almost June.
But he's accumulating points. You keep winning segments like this, and you're going to accumulate a lot of points.
Yeah, but he definitely has speed. That's the deal there. He has speed, but remember Darlington. I think Darlington, man, that one just fell away. He pitted a couple of laps too late, and it went away, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're Byron, you can't be. Yes, it stinks that you couldn't pull home the crown jewel win in the Coke 600, but look at the point gain he had. 65. You mentioned the points. 65 points. That's more. That's you maximum point gain in this race is 71, but in a normal race, the most you can get is 61. So he essentially won the race.
That's
but
no
make no
It just didn't
mistake,
bring
you
the
didn't
title
carry the
home.
jewel at
trophy
your home
home.
track. I'm sorry.
And that win would have meant everything for the Hendrick organization, which is based there in Charlotte. That would have been a big notch in their crown.
That's exactly right. That is the kind of deal that home race for Byron. He's from Charlotte,
Yep.
and then Rick Hendrick, and then it being a crown jewel. All right, they're just thing after thing after thing. I need to point out too, just to go back a little ways. Ross Chastain also finished second to Joey Logano at Texas, another 1.5-mile track, and then I need to. I know Larson throttled everybody at Kansas. I want to see kind of where the main players in this story from Sunday night did in the most recent races. Okay, because Larson, Bell, Blaney, Briscoe. Okay, so no, they weren't part of the big conversation in Kansas, okay? But it feels like the tide has turned there for Chastain. Now, I do want to point out all this talk because I just brought it up kind of out of the blue. Chastain had a backup car, flat tire, practice on Saturday. He crashed. Because they were in town, the story was, you heard it told over and over again on radio and TV, they went back to the shop that night. Chastain was with them till 10 p.m. Some of the mechanics were there as late as 2:30 in the morning Sunday. Barely had time to sleep and turn it around. Dan, you've had a bunch of those nights, I know.
Yeah.
And they took their backup car for Nashville, which is this coming weekend. They took components off of this race car that weren't wrecked and built this car up, and that's what won. Now, he came from the back. Officially, he didn't make a qualifying lap, so he started on paper in 40th. So that's where he'd come from the back. But I want to say that they don't keep stats easily that you can just look up a racing reference of when drivers had backup cars or unapproved adjustments and started in the back. There have been drivers that have done that, and one of them very familiar to all three of us. Chase Elliott won the 2020 Cup Championship. They had an adjustment Alec Gustafson on the 9 team needed to make before the race in 2020 at Phoenix, and he went back to front, and he did it quickly too, by the way. So that stat, I love that stat because on paper it's the first person over 50 years, but it's not the first person in a long time. And also you don't know how they stack them up in the back of the pack. If do you really start last or do you start third to last because there's two other cars with you? That's never on paper, right? So just want to put that caveat there. Dan's laughing like, shut up, get to the next subject. Okay, so he's like, what are you talking about? But really, it's not technically the last person to do it, right? All right, so Chastain won. Let me buzz through the top 10 and we'll pull out some little oats here. William Byron finished second. What more can you say about that? I would say go to our 5 to Go Facebook page instead of taking it at the time because the audio is not going to project great, me sharing it and all that. You got to really turn it up and listen to yourself. But Devin got video of Byron talking about the situation. Spoiler alert, it is no consolation that he had a great car and finished second. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, he didn't win the crown jewel, and that's all you're thinking about, especially right after the race. Chase Briscoe, he finished third. He won the pole, led a lap, but certainly not. He wanted to have more. So the one thing that stuck out to me, guys, is Chase Briscoe. Dan, I'd like you to comment real quick on this. He said he's got to get used to being able to drive the Gibbs car as like he could drive it way harder than he could an SHR car. It reminded me of Jimmy Johnson's difficulty going to IndyCar where he didn't realize how much more grip those had on road courses. He could just dive into the corners. I mean, that's something we don't think. You think a driver gets in a fast car, he should just be able to go faster automatically, but there's a lot they have to acclimate to.
Exactly. There's a lot of things that you think are the same, but they're not. They are different. And the characteristics, you can't even compare characteristics when you go from one car to another. And the fact that these cars are set up differently, whatever the engineers give you to set these cars up by, that's what you've got to go by. So maybe that is what is different about this car is how the engineers set the car up to be this way and to give him a better driver feel.
Yeah. I thought that was a really good give by Devin there. So check that out. 5 to Go podcast Facebook page, and you can hear Chase Briscoe talk about that. You can see Brad Keselowski. I could tell Brad Keselowski, first top 10 of the year, he didn't have much he wanted to say at all in that gaggle. I mean, he's generally great with the media, and he's just like, yeah, I'm not all that excited about it. I want more. I feel like we can win. And so A.J. Allmendinger finished fourth, too. Devin got a great video of him talking about that and him even saying he needs to improve his road course acumen at the Chicago Street Course, which is our next road course coming up. That's kind of strange how Mexico City is, excuse me. but Sonoma's later. Like Sonoma should just be in the next couple of weeks, and Sonoma's actually later in the summer there. So Mexico City, I think it's then Chicago, then Sonoma, if I'm not mistaken. So Allmendinger was in the top 5 the entire night, and that is after the disastrous stuff with the engine that caused him to blow his top at Kansas a couple of weeks ago. And remember last week of the stuff of the point standings we talked about, and our listener Jeff, who I met actually at Texas Motor Speedway, he told how he loved how we ran through the numbers. Our most recent show talking about the points. So last week we talked about how AJ Allmendinger had fallen to like 25th in points. He was inside the points or right on the edge of the playoff bubble. He falls to 25th with 2 bad finishes. Well, he has one good finish in Charlotte where he is a contender through the whole race, gets a bunch of points, 17th in points now. That's how close these points are. He goes basically 16th, 25th, 17th. That's wild. That's wild, okay? But AJ Allmendinger ends up finishing 4th. I mentioned Brad Keselowski, race 13, first top 10 of the year. He also won the pole for the All-Star race and spun himself out in that too. He's had a lot of unforced errors there, but he gets a top 5. And there's Chase Elliott, guys. Just another quiet day, ho-hum. 37 points compared to Byron's 65, but he does finish 6th. Hard to complain about that, all right? But Michael McDowell, who finished 7th, had more points than Chase. He was one of those quiet contenders through the evening there. Christopher Bell, last year's winner, Devin's favorite result to a race ever. Go back about 50 episodes ago and hear how much Devin loved the results of last year's Coke 600 and how they should have been running in the rain, okay? He finished 8th. I'm just giving you a hard time, but he finished 8th. 9th went to Ryan Preece, also had a really good run in that race. And how about Noah Gregson finishing 10th there? So as I run through those names of the top 10 there, Dan, what do you think about just how some of these drivers that you wouldn't expect on kind of a regular track and a long endurance race, and there are a lot of people, I mean, even outside the top 10, Stenhouse, Barry, Jones, SVG, and Kyle Busch were the rest of your top 15. There were a lot of people mixed into that you wouldn't have necessarily predicted beforehand.
No, but you also talked about how good the coverage was of this race, but you also have to understand how much was going on behind the lead cars that was not talked about very much at all. True. And this whole gaggle of cars that were from 3rd all the way back to probably 10th, if any one of those had made one mistake, would have been devastating to the rest of the field, because that's how close they were running, and they were running as hard as they could run to try to, just like you said about Keselowski, he ran as hard as he could run, and he knew that he did absolutely the best he could do and still bring a race car home.
Yeah, well, I think that was the key, bringing it home there. And let's talk too about some other notables in this race. All right, so I thought SVG, not a notable going in, but just it was notable that he was top 15 or top 20 most of the night. He's been getting lapped in these races, including other mile and a halves. And Van Gisbergen ended up 14th there. He started 30th and got there too. That's impressive. Denny Hamlin, like we mentioned before, ran out of fuel. He was the only person that had any for William Byron. And I'm glad that Chastain caught and passed Byron, or caught and had a fight with Byron. I'm not rooting. I know I'm wearing the melon shirt here. That's just to keep it topical. I was rooting for there to be a battle to the finish organically, right? And not have some wacko caution and the 5th place car end up winning. Hamlin was the only one that could bring it to Byron at that time. And once Hamlin got out of the way, Chastain came to life. So I'm glad that Chastain was there to fill in for the role of Hamlin once he lost fuel, okay? But Hamlin ended up 16th. Another hard luck finish for him, but it was a good points night for him. At least he got 44 points. Also back in the pack, Connor Zilic, second Cup Series start. He got caught up in the Jimmy Johnson wreck. So Zilic ended up, he finished 2 laps down, 23rd. He actually said on PRM before the race, I'm going to be lucky to finish on the lead lap. That's really was his goal, and he didn't. So that was tough for him. Going back, Ty Gibbs, he had a pit road speeding penalty at the end and just had the wheels proverbially come off. He was only 24th. John Hunter Nemechek was a top 10 car a lot of the night. I didn't see what happened to him that caused him to finish 27th. Did you, Devin? But he was up there. I mean, really impressive running with Allmendinger. And then it kind of came apart for him. But fortunately, Eric Jones was able to make up for it. And then we get back to the cars that didn't finish. I mean, there's Josh Bilicki, 33rd. Carson Hocevar. My gosh, another race where Hocevar restarts on the front row and his engine detonates as it goes green. And that ends up causing a crash for Chris Buescher also. It took Buescher even further out of contention than he already was. So Hocevar finished 34th. Devin, that's another one, man, that got away for Hocevar. Did you catch up with him or see what the vibe was of the old ride, the Dente Chili Chevy there?
Now, the problem is with Charlotte Motor Speedway is that where the care center is, which I have video of Kyle Larson's care center interview, but you can't hear what he's saying at all because of where the care center. And Doug, you've been to the care center before too at Charlotte, right?
Yeah,
so it's at the entrance of Pit Road at the track, so it's basically on the front stretch. So. Yeah, I did not catch up with Hocevar at all after the blown engine or anything like that. But man, that just stinks for him because he's a driver that's put in some really good runs with Spire Motorsports, and he just has nothing to show for it. Some of it being mechanical issues, like what happened last night in the 600, and it's just unfortunate for him because you can definitely see, and I remember we talked about him a few years ago, but he has the talent. Yeah. I think he has the talent and could break through. One driver too. I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but who do you think will pull off their first Cup win? Ty Gibbs or Carson Hocevar?
A lot of the momentum goes Hocevar's way. I still think Ty Gibbs is a better equipment and is a little more experienced, but to me, it's a draw. What about you? What about you guys, Deb?
Gibbs I feel like is very safe in that ride for the time being.
Considering he's the co-owner of it, yeah.
Yes, but when you look at the results of what he's done as a Cup Series driver going back to 2022, they just aren't. They're not terrible, but they're not the best that you would want, especially for the equipment that Gibbs is in. He underperforms in that equipment.
Well, the thing that's concerning is, and we don't need to rest too long on the Gibbs thing. We've talked about it a lot. He's had some better runs since, and then has fallen off the last few weeks. Him not being even a factor in qualifying for the All-Star race, for instance, like they should have come out there guns a-blazing in North Wilkesboro and whipped the field in the open, and that shows how close the field is. All right, but yeah, they were no non-factors in Charlotte. I mean, and he should have been a contender, right? Just by being a Gibbs car, the other Toyotas were wound up pretty well. But I feel like it's still 50-50 just because of experience and the type of equipment. And I honestly think that Ty Gibbs is a very good driver too. I think that they've just had some stuff happen and they're trying to pull out of their own tailspin. What about you, Dan? Carson Hocevar versus Ty Gibbs. Who gets their first Cup win?
I really do feel like I really did think that Ty Gibbs would until I saw Hocevar this weekend. He impressed me this weekend. And I really think now that it may be Hocevar that gets the first win over Ty Gibbs.
And Hocevar legitimately qualified 39th, was hanging it, throwing him right on the dash during qualifying and spun out. So he drove from the back like Chastain did and put that thing on his shoulders. And if I don't know what count, okay, but he finished in the top 10 in stage 2 and stage 3. He put that car on his back and got up there fairly quickly before halfway.
Yeah, because I was looking at his points. He got 18 points, and that compares with the people around him in the finish was Bubba had 2 points, and then above him was Kraus with 5 points, or Bilicki with 0 points.
Yeah. Bilicki's entered in the Xfinity Series points. I think that's nice. So, yeah, but yeah, Derek Kraus, who's running just a very limited whatever schedule, has the 5 points there. Yeah, that's tough. So Hocevar, and everybody behind Hocevar had crash DNF. So Bubba Wallace, it says Bubba Wallace was out on 307. So was he in that crash? I thought Bubba Wallace got swept up in the Blaney Suarez Jimmy Johnson crash, but. Or was that a different? Now I'm getting the crashes mixed up. Johnson was on a different crash, but anyway, but it says Bubba crashed at the same time or DNF'd at the same time. Maybe he came out and made some laps and then DNF'd. But Bubba Wallace was 35th. Daniel Suarez just another miserable run there. I don't know. In the Suarez crash, Devin, you were there and seeing the replays. I mean, did it seem like Suarez came up and got turned around into Blaney, or did Blaney come down into him? I know Blaney was, as they said on the broadcast, swatting flies all night in that car.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell, especially when you have an ill handling race car. I'd have to look at the replay again between the incident between the two, but I'm not to be honest, I'm not really too sure who to put the blame on, but I mean, you mentioned Blaney there. How I just Penske, what a rough weekend for them.
Horrible weekend. So Austin Cindric had crash damage and finished laps down. Coke 600. Joey Logano non-factor in a race. He's a Coca-Cola driver too, by the way. And then Blaney, the only one that was any good out of the Penske shop, and they struggled all night, but they kind of rebounded. And that was Josh Berry, who finished 12th.
You know, I do want to. I do want to say one thing. I look back because that's one of the big topics. I listened to Sirius XM NASCAR radio earlier today. It was about the lack of speed from Penske this weekend. Look at the last two seasons for Team Penske, and it's around this time or within a month span of this time. Look at the two drivers that would end up winning the championship. You had Ryan Blaney win the 600 2 years ago, won the championship in 23. This time last year, you had Logano win the All-Star race, and then you had him win the Nashville Cup race later in the month of June. We go to Nashville this weekend, so this is in that month time span where, okay, maybe Penske's not putting the best results on, but this is the time they come alive. It's just we're seeing maybe potentially the end of the shortcomings of the team at this point in the season. I don't know. That's the vibe I get when we talk about this.
Let's remember who won Texas.
Joey Logano. That's true.
Let's remember who won Talladega. I know Talladega. Austin Cindric. I think it to me, and they're leading. I mean, they're not great. Blaney's had a lot of bad luck, but Blaney was third in Kansas. I'm just going back. Blaney was third in Kansas. He's not but he's got speed. What they didn't have. This race seemed uncharacteristic compared to even their others this year. They were just off. Now Bristol, I remember Logano was trash, man. He was in bad shape at Bristol. So it shows how you could show up at the track with one little experiment or one little decision that you can't really undo once you're at the track and you're out to lunch. All right. But tough weekend for Penske. And so in the Indy 500 parlance there, you had the big story through the week was, and I think this decision was, so there are multiple decisions that happened. We talked in our last episode about the Newgarden and willpower machines being disqualified and then, sent to the back for the Indy 500. All right. They had initially just taken him out of Fast 12 qualifying, then they put him all the way in the back. The story that came out after last week's episode is Penske cleaned house. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the names of the other two strategists, but Tim Cindric, who had been at Penske since 1999, Austin's dad, was fired because this is the second year in a row that Penske's had a cheating scandal, and they own the IndyCar series. Penske owns IMS. So they just felt like they had to clean house. And they still went to the Indy 500. Now, willpower, non-factor. Joseph Newgarden started in the back and drove into the top 10 before halfway, and I think would have made a really good run for the race win. And his car had a mechanical failure on pit road, and they couldn't get it restarted, and he retired. So he was out. Willpower was a non-factor, and then the craziest thing, well, it's not the craziest thing we've seen. Dan, you saw this, right? You watched the whole Indy 500. You saw it happen to Scott McLaughlin. So first off, the race gets delayed by rain. We're told by Jeff Gordon, hey, Kyle Larson's only got a 40-minute window. And they start this race 40 minutes after it was supposed to start. So I'm thinking they blew the wad. Tony Kanaan's going to drive the 17 car. They can't change drivers mid-race at Indy. They retire the car if Larson gets out early. They keep him in there. Then they crash coming to the green flag, and that's McLaughlin. We'll talk about that in a second. And then they have all these cautions early in that race. And I'm thinking there is no way Kyle Larson is going to make it out of here. But they must have said 40 minutes to really was an hour and 40 minutes or something. They must have had way more time to play with than we thought, because I thought for sure Tony Kanaan was going to drive that thing once they had the rain delay. Nonetheless, coming to the green flag, Dan, we need him to go green. Go green for Larson, baby. And Scott McLaughlin wipes out while he's warming up his tires on the warm-up lap. It just devastated, as anybody would be. I mean, we've seen some things like that. Dan, thinking over the years, how many times have you seen something like this? It's not many.
I've seen the Cup cars spin out, warming the tires. I've seen that happen. I've seen the race cars hit pace cars, and I've seen the race cars hit jet blowers. there's been a lot of things that I've seen
That's true.
that
2012,
yeah,
JPM, baby Montoya just blew that sucker up. That was
when I
crazy.
thought I hadn't
Hey,
seen everything, or when I thought I had seen everything, I hadn't seen everything.
there
So
was
I've even
didn't
seen
Elmo
people run
Langley
over on pit road.
didn't Elmo Langley die of a heart attack while he was driving the pace car?
That is what I understand. Yes.
Okay. But do you remember the one? This is like 90. So remember when Dale Earnhardt had all his back problems and he had this nerve that was making his limbs go to sleep and stuff or something like that? And maybe our neck. And didn't he pass out during the pace laps of a race?
That I don't know. I know he was taking people. We went to Sonoma for a race out there, and he was taking people for a ride out there in the pace car before the race started on Sunday, and
Earnhardt.
he wrecked the pace car carrying people to ride in the pace car.
Those are different times.
Different times.
I was showing a friend of mine who's just started. I've told y'all about her before, Taylor, okay, a coworker of mine. She's just got, like, in the last couple of weeks, gotten into racing, and Suarez is her guy. And I had a video of Suarez driving me and my father-in-law, Joseph, in the pace car at Talladega in 2019. And Suarez, he was supposed to be done, and they squeezed us into the last second, so he was not super thrilled about it. And he was flooring it right next to the wall. And of course, I loved it because I'm like, this is a professional driver driving at 40% of his normal speed or whatever effort. Joseph was not a fan. It was pretty funny, but there's just weird stuff. But I got a feel for Scott McLaughlin, who also thought he had a shot at this thing, and he was just despondent afterwards. Marco Andretti got crashed on the first lap. And he only comes to run Indy these days. He's not a full-time driver in IndyCar. That race just had bugaboos and demons all through it. The pole sitter, Robert Schwartzman, did lead the first lap, but then later in the race crashes into his pit crew, and his car was done for the day after that. You had Alexander Rossi car catch fire, the Ed Carpenter racing machine. And I mean, you saw I think it was the gas man get lit up on that thing, and I mean, he was okay. So, I mean, there were pit crew members going by the wayside. I mean, that was scary stuff. Dan, you've been, run over as a pit crew member on the 9 team before. I'm sure that really hit you in the feels too.
That's one of the things that really, when that car came in that feist, I said, "There's no way he can stop that car," and it's sliding across crew members. Even though you think you are somewhat protected with the gear you have on, you're not protected. The good thing is that these cars are light cars, and that's all you can say about them.
Yeah.
And they're so low to the ground, they can pin you, but they can't really get up on you unless something bizarre happens. But make no mistake, Sunday was a bizarro day for sure. And to see all this stuff happening, especially the fire. How many times have you seen a fire on pit road with an Indy car?
I mean, I don't watch nearly as many races, but I would think it's rarer than in NASCAR. Yeah.
Yeah, it is rarer than in NASCAR.
Yeah. There was an observation you had too, the pit crews with what they do with their equipment, right?
Yeah, this just blows my mind. I'm thinking, okay, as a tire changer, what's the most important thing to me on race day? And that's protecting my air wrench. And my air wrench that at the time was probably in the neighborhood of, they were at that time probably about $1,500. So I'm thinking the right front tire changer gets done and he just takes a sling with that air wrench. And I'm thinking, these things have got to be big bucks. So, Doug, how much do you think an air wrench for an Indy car costs nowadays?
I wouldn't have any idea. So
okay, I went online today and I did a little research on that. And the air wrenches, they start out you buy them at 10 grand, and then you make the changes, proprietary changes. Wow. You can do whatever you want to make your air wrench different from everybody else's. So these range from 10 grand to 30 grand a piece, and they're rebuilt after 3 races, which I don't believe that. I think that they probably, based on the way they sling them, they got to rebuild them after every race, and this would be the top.
Are there not people on the other side of the wall catching them, though? I thought I heard that mentioned.
Pit wall catches them, and they just sling those things, and they hit pit wall. And I'm thinking, this is not good, because you're relying on that for the next stop. And also, too, I also looked up how much they cost. And did you know, how much do you guess the lug nuts are a piece?
I know that it was not very much when they were the old NASCAR 5 lug nuts, but
Yeah, we
I
were paying
understand.
we were paying 90 cents a piece for lug nuts at that time when it's 5 lug nuts. Now it's one, and on the Indy cars, these lug nuts stay within the wheel. They don't come out of the wheel, so you've got one lug nut per wheel, and they're already in the hole there
Yeah.
where it goes on. It's already in there, and those lug nuts are $1,000 a piece, and
What?
they're used one time.
I
and the
didn't know that.
sockets and the sockets are $1,000 a piece, and it would be up to you as the race goes on, depending how many pit stops, how many tires you change, and looking at that socket, what your assessment is this going to work the next race or the next pit stop, or do I need to change sockets in the race? I
On your
could go
gun.
through 2 or 3 sockets because these air wrenches spin at 15,000 RPM,
My
and
gosh.
they torque. They're anywhere air pressure. They're anywhere from 360 to 450 pounds of air pressure behind these things. So you're plugged up to a bomb anyway whenever you run these, and they can torque up to 3,000 foot pounds,
That is unbelievable.
pound feet of torque.
That is
It's
unbelievable.
incredible. If you get my point is, if you get a chance and just want to look at this, anybody that's watching and just wants to just play a little bit, go in there and look at these air wrenches that they use on the F1 cars, and how even the tube that the lug nut, which that would be the axle tube, even the axle tube is hollow for a reason, because of the air that goes through it, and the way the air moves through the brake rotors, it has a way to escape out of the axle hole and helps cool the brakes. They have this to a science on
Wow.
everything that they can possibly do. And since about 2010, 2012, so much engineering has gone into just the aspects of the cooling and how the air moves through there. It's like the epaulets on a jet, the way the wings turn up on the end and the airflow, and that helps create lift. Well, they figured out how the air goes through this wheel to help keep from disturbing the air that goes across the spoilers.
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's and to think that while Indy cars were technologically advanced, it's generally considered, it's a shorter season and they have a lot of spec parts. It's considered more economical than NASCAR, but yet you hear this stuff and you're like, how in the world is that? That is
Yeah.
crazy. Wow. Well,
It talks about how it pulls the air from how the air that goes through the wheels and the brakes and so forth doesn't affect any of the air that goes across the spoilers.
yeah. We know just as in NASCAR that teams are all over the place trying to figure out that little bit of edge. So we talked
So
about in
yeah,
Penske, there was an attenuator on the back of the car that the stock version of that came with some kind of part down the middle of it, as a part like a cleave down the middle of it, if you will, and they were filling that in on some of the Penske cars sometimes, but it went back even into Joseph Newgarden's Indy 500 winning car from a year ago. So, but they didn't get caught in any inspection until the team pointed it out on Fast 12 qualifying. They nixed that. Well, after the Indy 500, as that race was playing out, we saw Ryan Hunter-Reay up there with a chance to win. His last pit stop was a disaster. That didn't work out. So then Marcus Ericsson, the winner 3 years ago, former Formula One driver who had moved from Ganassi in the last couple of years over to the Andretti Autosport team. Marcus Ericsson, he's leading. Nailed the pit stop. David Malukas, AJ Foyt Racing, number 4, nailed his pit stop. Came out. I mean, they were all right there next to each other, but in between the two is Alex Palou. Marcus Ericsson leaves a lane open, bottom of the track. Alex Palou, car number 10, who's won 4 of the first 5 races this year. He goes into the lead, makes just a precise, thread the needle, pinpoint move in a moment of a lapse of grip, if you will, for Ericsson. And Palou goes to the lead. It does everything he needs to do to win the race. It was a little bit weird and disappointing because you had lap cars in front of him that affected the dynamics of the leaders and maybe made it less of a one-up kind of race at the end because he could get toes off of those lap cars. So that was a little bit disappointing too. That in the picture for the win, you have the Devlin DiFrancesco machine and the other Devlin DiFrancesco machine and the other one that I can't think of here. But that was a little bit weird. But if Marcus Ericsson had won this race, we would have had controversy on a Monday, folks, because afterwards, and I'm not going to get into the parts and whatever, okay, we don't normally take a deep dive on Indy, but afterwards, Marcus Ericsson, who finished second, disqualified, put to the back.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Kirkwood, his teammate, disqualified, put to the back. And Callum Ilott, the teammate for Prima Racing of pole sitter Robert Schwartzman, who, as we mentioned a while ago, crashed on pit road, he was disqualified as well. Marcus Ericsson was set to pocket, and I say him, the team, was set to pocket about $1 million.
You mean you can't run over your pit crew on pit road?
No, you can, but he didn't, fortunately. However, he got DQ'd. And while last place pays about $500,000, which is pretty nice, and what kind of race does that? That was a $500,000 mistake for that race team.
Yep.
To lose that spot. And imagine if they had won. So Alex Palou not only gets his first Indy 500, it's his first win on an oval in IndyCar. And this guy dominates the series.
Palou's move on Ericsson was like Chastain's move on Byron at Charlotte. That to me was the similarity of the two races. Yep. Is how all of that changed in the blink of an eye, and really you didn't understand the consequences of what was happening at the time.
That if you had reached down to dip your chip in the guac, mm-hmm. or to pop open another cold one that 1 second, which you shouldn't be reaching out to do anything in those last laps at Indy, you miss it. It goes by quicker than you know it. So that was the story in Indianapolis 500. It was a crazy race. And then let's kind of take the worlds back together again. We haven't even got to F1. We're approaching an hour here already. Look, Kyle Larson was not as big of a story proportionately to what he was a year ago, because then it was fresh. You hadn't had someone do it in a long time, the double. Last year, of course, marred by rain. He runs Indy, finishes, I think, 17th or so, doesn't make it to NASCAR in time to even jump in his car mid-race. Well, this year, Larson was running mid-pack, doing his thing, probably would have been a top 10 conversation. You never know what happens at the end of these races. And then he crashes in Indianapolis 500. So we're all sweating. Oh, man, is he going to make it? Oh, man, the rain's delayed this race, all this stuff. And I'm thinking there's no way he's going to run this race. So now he's running it, and there's not a mention. I listened to his radio. They never talked about that I listened to, is he going to be here or not? And then short of the finish, somewhere in the last half of that race, Kyle Larson crashes out. So, Devin, you were in Charlotte, already in the media center, watching the Indy 500, right? I know, sorry, you're sneezing over there. But you were already over there watching the Indy 500. And this story plays into the stories you're going to cover. What was the mood like in Charlotte, both with Kyle Larson's first crash and then with his second one that happened in the Coke 600? Kind of walk me through a brief timeline of the surrounding events.
Well, in the media center, it just kind of felt like when he wrecked in the Indy 500, it was just like that. Oh man, that stinks to not finish the race. That's kind of the vibe that we got there. And then when he wrecked later in the race, I think things were set up in the 600 for him, not to necessarily fail, but you saw him tap the wall early on in the race. He's in the top 5. Then he pit road and then spins out later in the race. It just seemed like the issues compiled after he initially tapped the wall early in the race, and it just kind of felt like, yeah, this day's over. And then it ended up
broke the toe link or had some sort of toe link damage when he brushed the wall, and then he spun out after that. And that was right. Those were together. Those were then a few laps of each other.
Yeah.
And then he was mired in the back. They had worked extensively on the car during the Coca-Cola 600, multiple pit stops, and he just didn't really make a whole lot of ground up. But he was a bystander in that Suarez crash. He was Suarez came down and just tagged him after running into Blaney. So that
but he shouldn't have been. He shouldn't have been where he was at anyway.
Sure.
If truth be known, that's one of those things where you got to kick yourself because you put yourself there.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I was texting with that same group text I mentioned before. I was like, guys, watch out. Larson's going to win. Because we saw in 2021 in the Coke 600 There were a couple epic Coke 600s in a row, and Larson at one point had caught on fire or something or whatever. He had all these problems, and Cliff Daniels went viral with the speech he gave to that team. And he did the same thing in this race. He said, guys, chill out. It's lap 40. We're 1/10 of the way through this thing. We're going to be fine. And I really believed it. But then he had a little more damage than they expected. And then
yeah, because you've got segment racing and cautions and all these reasons that it's hard to compare, as we've done before. When you compare decades, when you and I were talking about the race at Charlotte in '82, the 600, and you had cars that ran third, fourth, fifth that were laps down.
Yeah.
And the way it is nowadays, it is more impossible to get laps down. It is still possible, but there are ways to keep you on the lead lap now that decades ago you did not have.
Well, yeah, case in point, 17 cars, including hard-fighting Joey Logano there, finished on the lead lap in this Coca-Cola 600. We looked up 1982 because you were trying to see in that last 100 miles how many failures they were.
Yeah, the attrition in the last 100 miles, because when we ran, it was one of those deals where usually it was engine failure in the last 100 miles because you were used to building engines that had a 500 plus a few extra lap miles on them compared to the last 100 miles that you had to run in the 600.
So just speaking of that, in the 1982 World 600, all right, in the last 100 miles, there were 6 DNFs.
For what reason did it say?
So 25th place, Jeff Bodine, lap 350. So lap 334 is what is as Devin didn't tell us before. We're making fun of his back. No, but lap 3, I'm just messing with you, man. Lap 334 was the 500-mile mark. All right. So between there and lap 379, so we're talking a 40-plus lap period, you had Jeff Bodine lose a rear end lap 350. And then in the next 29 laps, you had 5 engine failures in that race.
5 engine failures.
Brad Teague driving for Henderson Motorsports, who still runs in trucks, by the way. Brad Teague, Darrell Waltrip, Junior Johnson team. David Pearson, who is driving the 03 car. I don't know who that is. 03. Morgan Shepherd driving the number 98 Levi Garrett car. And Kyle Petty driving for Petty Enterprises.
Yep.
You had 5 engine failures in a 29-lap period, basically.
Yep.
It's
that last 100 miles. It was so grueling on an engine that you had experience running 500 miles. But beyond that, you had little experience on knowing how to tune those things so they would run that last 100 miles at the pace that you had started the race at.
And Bill Elliott finished second in that race, by the way, Dan. So you get your flowers on that for sure. Yeah, Devin.
Yep. You mentioned the 500-mile deal with these engines and maybe just a little bit extra, but how do you factor in practice into that?
Oh, back then you changed engines.
Back then there was happy hour.
Yeah.
There was happy hour and you changed engines.
Even in 2001
all you did once
2.
you changed engines on Saturday afternoon, if it was a Sunday race, you changed engines on Saturday afternoon, and you went out and you probably ran maybe 10 or 12 laps just to make sure that you had no oil leaks, everything was as perfect as you could make it, and that everything was ready to race in the next day.
Yeah, so they even up into the early 2000s, you still had a qualifying engine, practice engine. It was crazy the amount of stuff.
And believe it was transmissions. It was transmissions and rear ends as well, because you usually put a fresh gear in. I know that I learned that race up there, the 600 that we ran for the million when we had so many problems, put a new gear in happy hour that day, and they forgot to put grease in it. And I know how long a gear will last with no grease. It'll run 3 laps.
Surprising that many even. Okay, golly.
It ran 3 laps before it just basically virtually locked up.
Man, that's different times. Different times. This race here is won by Neil Bonnet, 1982. It had 1, 2, 3.
How many cautions?
5, 6. Hold on. So it had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold on, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 DNFs out of the 42 drivers. 20 did not finish. It had it had a good many cautions. It had 7 or 8 cautions here. Let's see. I'm looking at 10. Excuse me, 10 cautions. 10 cautions for 62 laps. And then margin of victory, it says 2CL. I don't even know what that means.
Sounds like too close.
2CL. Okay.
Or maybe 1 by 2 laps or something like that.
Indy 500, had a large number of cautions, large number of people that that finished respectably in that race, so to speak. But it is interesting in that Indy 500 though, where cars can kind of get stuck in a spot, so to speak. I don't know how to better explain that, but you see people and you think if they got a fast car, they can just drive right through. But sometimes you really do get pinned back, So,
my perspective of that is when you get trapped in between traffic on 285 and you just can't get out, and you're trapped in until somebody makes a move.
Yeah, sounds like my experience driving to Chattanooga on Saturday, or driving to Charlotte on Saturday, going down 75 South, going towards Atlanta.
Well, so you went back to Atlanta to go up to Charlotte?
Well, I mean, I didn't come back home. I just went through. I went 75.
Really? You don't go across?
285 to 85.
Really?
Yep.
There's no interstate that goes Chattanooga toward Charlotte?
No.
Wow.
You can go on up and probably catch I-40, but you'll be about an hour and a half above Charlotte.
Oh, man. I guess that makes sense. Okay, wow. By the way, Racing Reference, which is owned by NASCAR, by the way, does not have the Indy 500 results on it or the Formula 1 results.
I was looking at that earlier. They don't have the last 2 races in there, actually.
That's so ridiculous. I just don't. I know you can get the results elsewhere. Just that's ridiculous. Okay.
But did you notice that the penalty page comes out on Indy? NASCAR has no penalties, and Indy has penalties. Get that?
Yeah, really. Hey, going through the rest of the weekend here, but we'll end with F1. Saturday's Xfinity race should have been won by Justin Allgaier, and I think it seemed like it was miscommunication at first when he didn't make his last pit stop, but I think he just decided he didn't want to risk having other people stay out in front of him and him having to pass them. And then they had several cautions at the end, and he finally gets as they keep having these restarts, the cars that took tires, which included William Byron, keep catching up to him to where finally at the end of the race they blow his doors off. And that's basically what happened. So Allgaier dominates yet another race just like he did at Texas, but he doesn't close the deal there. And it is William Byron Saturday, early evening going into victory lane. On Friday night, that race wasn't until about 8 p.m. or so. Friday night, it was Corey Heim absolutely getting revenge on the universe for a couple races that he's seen fall through the cracks of his fingers there, and he's able to just dominate and win in that race. I got to point out for the North Carolina Education Lottery 200, by the way, that Corey Heim won, but it's going to take a second for my internet to load, but it was cool to see BJ McLeod get an opportunity in Aspire Motorsports truck. It was McLeod's first start in trucks in 4 years. Of course, he's not running his Cup team anywhere close to full time anymore. And BJ McLeod, he didn't get a great finish. He finished 15th. That was fine, lap down. But Ross Chastain gave a run there to Corey Heim, ended up finishing second. Caden Honeycutt there in the third position in that race. And then also, too, we need to mention that Austin Green won the ARCA Menard Series race earlier on Friday that went green at about 6 p.m. or so on Friday, early evening there. So big shout out to Austin Green, David Green, Xfinity Series champion, and now NASCAR official David Green's son. So then there's Formula One. That was on Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern or so. And you had, big shock, a McLaren on the pole, Lando Norris. Big shock, Lando Norris wins the thing. They had mandatory 2 pit stops in that race. So they were trying to do something to shake it up, to shake up the strategy, to create some passing opportunities or at least standings change opportunities. Well, and Max Verstappen basically decided to wait until the very end of the race to make his last pit stop, just in case there was a red flag and he could get a free pit stop and then win the race and make a pit stop with no penalty for making it, right? But that didn't happen. Verstappen had to pit with a few laps to go. No longer are Red Bulls the fastest cars in Formula One. It is now the McLarens, and sure enough, it was Lando Norris that went to victory lane there over Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc. Or maybe I had the order wrong. Charles Leclerc and then Oscar Piastri, nonetheless. But Devin, you said you watched that at the hotel, right? You didn't watch that with any other racing people?
No, I just kind of had it on in the background, so I loosely followed the F1 race on Sunday.
Yeah,
well, it's just one of those deals that just watching the race, you just kind of know who's going to win, unless something happens on a pit stop.
Yeah. You got to run all the laps. You never know, but Formula One doesn't really have an attrition issue or anything, right? They don't even take gas on pit stops. Okay, it's really they're stuck in line. But one thing, Dan, it's all about playing the rules. Teams figured out that if you had two team cars running next to each other, you could use the second team car to run seconds slower than the lead pace, bottle up all these cars in a train behind it, and then allow your teammate to haul butt and clean air and build a 21-second gap so they can make a pit stop without losing a spot in the race. That's how hard it is to pass in Monaco. We saw the Mercedes cars, the Racing Bulls cars, the Williams cars do that and really flame F1 Nation in doing so. I mean, they were going hard on the broadcast about that with Sky Sports.
So does that mean that the rule book's going to get thicker after they understand this?
Well, they made it thicker to try to create that second pit stop. I think the sentiment is that the second pit stop did not make a whole lot of difference as far as that. But yeah, that was interesting. I mean, I think what a strategy. Whoever the first person is to figure out, if we just run our two cars, we get next to each other, the other person just backs everyone up so the other one can get a free pit stop. That is pretty genius. I got to give it to them. But man, how frustrated would you be? So George Russell actually he took now I love strategy. George Russell decided he would take the 5-second penalty for cutting the chicane, and one of the chicanes there, and I don't know the names of all the turns in Monaco, okay? He cuts the chicane to jump in front of the Williams of Alex Albon and said, hey, I'll go ahead and do that and take the 5-second penalty because I was losing tons of seconds behind Albon holding me up. So he just says, F it, goes for it. Well, what does Formula One do? They give him like a 20-second, or they give him a drive-through penalty at pit road for choosing to do that, for choosing to violate the rules, essentially. So even his gamble with I'll take 5-second penalty versus losing 20 seconds on the track, well, Formula One gave him 20 seconds anyway with his pit road penalty. So there you go. But that's F1. We never get into that deep on this show, mainly because Devin has told me that he will quit this show if we ever talk about F1. That's pretty much. I think something like that.
You'd be contract. It's funny. I'm not going to name names, but I was listening to Sirius XM NASCAR radio this morning, and some of those people on that channel just do not like F1.
Yeah. I believe it. Well, I mean, if they're saying it on Sirius, you can name names. It's okay. I mean, they are.
It was somebody on the morning drive. Either it was Pete Pistone or Mike Bagley. It was one of the two.
Well,
that just was not.
Look, here's the deal. Here's what in NASCAR we all feel this, right? It's two different kinds of racing. Eric Von Hessler, who used to have your spot on the show, Devin, would call Formula One the feast of capitalism. This is cubic money being spent to a level, and it is a worldwide sport. It is the preeminent motorsport in the whole world. And it's annoying as United States race fans to see NASCAR lose its spot. And we talk about this all the time on this show here in the cultural zeitgeist to Formula One. I have coworkers. I have people like they think that is the only motorsport around. They probably think that the Indy 500 is somehow Formula One because they watch Drive to Survive. And that's why I put it on X again. Here we go. I said, man, I would love my F1 friends to tune in to NASCAR right now, or I'm sitting here with the sound turned down because we got guests over, okay? And I'm seeing William Byron and Denny Hamlin side by side consistently over and over again on the edge of control, inches from the wall. And I know they're inches from the wall, centimeters from the wall in Monaco. I'm like, guys, what? I mean, don't tell me that all we do is turn left. And that's what they said. Well, we turn left and right over here. Yeah, yeah. The most boring NASCAR races right now are the ones where they turn left and right, okay? I'm sorry. So I don't know. That's why people get upset. I love Formula One for what it is, but you're never going to convince me. You can convince me it's a bigger deal and it's more prestigious. You're never going to convince me that it's more exciting.
Doug, did you notice Hamlin's pit stop when that last pit stop where they lost fuel?
Yeah,
And
what'd you see in that? Did you notice something was wrong immediately, or?
yeah, if you counted from the time he stopped and he plugged the can in and did the count, he didn't stay on pit road long enough. Even if you didn't lose the fuel, I don't think he was on pit road long enough to get enough fuel to run the rest of the race. And
Interesting.
especially if they had overtime.
Okay, so if it had gone perfectly, you think he was there such a short time, but he was there the same amount. Like he didn't gain on Byron that much.
You
Like,
have no idea entering and the gas man plugging the can in, the time difference between the two teams on the time on pit road.
man,
You you really had to count it off from the time the can plugged in, and I know the first can went in, and then he got to the second can, and they counted off, and it was gone. It was done.
wow.
And I don't
Yeah.
think there was enough time on pit road.
Yeah, that stunk for Hamlin because it was really the Hamlin, Byron, and Reddick show for most of the day, and then you had that pit road mistake. I think was it to begin? No, it was the final pit stop, right?
Yeah,
For Hamlin that they didn't fuel the car all the way.
Right. That was Hamlin, and Reddick's mistake was on the final. I guess he sped exiting. I think it was. Ty Gibbs made a really late pit stop and sped, so both monster cars outdid themselves there at the end. But Reddick finished way back. Instead of finishing mid pack, he finished way back because you saw he almost crashed William Byron. So he serves his pass-through penalty. He's a lap down, and he goes right front into the wall and just like hits. I mean, I normally that's a caution, but nothing fell off the car, and they kept going. And I think he ended up having to pit for damage or something after that, and just that did him in. Reddick, by the way, now we're all over the place. We got uncomfortable with F1. We went right back to NASCAR. I'm just kidding. But Reddick has really not had he has had a strange year. And I mean, he's fifth in points. He's very relevant, but he just, 3 top fives this year, 87 laps led. I mean, he's only led 11 more laps than Chase Elliott. Like, I don't know.
Maybe they're saving the best to last.
What's that now?
Maybe they're saving the best to last.
Well, there's that too. You were saying that about Byron for sure earlier.
Yep.
Bubba Wallace has led more laps than Tyler Reddick this year. Doesn't have the finishes to show for it, 12th in points. But anyway, well, we've been up and down the board here. I know we didn't take deep dives maybe as you want. Some people wanted on F1, but it really was what it was. They have, although I will say there's a lot of discourse about the F1 cars being so wide that it's hard to pass at Monaco. But I saw a list of stats about the number of green flag passes at Monaco over the years, and it's only like a little bit less. Like they've always had trouble passing there. That's always been a who could qualify amazingly and then put on a spectacle.
Doug, it's like NASCAR. The drivers make the cars wider.
Well, yeah. And you saw in the first lap of that F1 Monaco race, Kimi Antonelli passed like 3 cars at once. This 18-year-old, he is unbelievable. I mean, this kid really is going to be great. He passes 3 cars at once and then just kind of goes straight off of a turn. And Gabriel Bortoleto in the Sauber, the rookie, another rookie, and he just runs him right up in the barrier. And I mean, it was an amazing pass, but then Bortoleto's just sitting there on the outside trying to maintain position, and then before you know it, there's no more racetrack. Yep. And he finished the race. He didn't have significant damage. He pitted and put a nose on it, and I love saying that. They pitted and just, put a nose on it, and that was that, and he continued on, so – but an exciting weekend there. We're glad y'all tuned in. I know this is a longer episode. We had a lot to discuss. One thing out of the news bucket over here, well, maybe 2 things. If you're wondering, Indy 500, I mean, I think it's undisputed the biggest race in the world now. It's bigger than Le Mans. It's bigger than the Daytona 500, bigger than Monaco. And I'm not talking in terms of ratings because, but I'm talking in terms of interest from around the world and prestige. The Indy 500 had just over 7 million viewers on Fox, up from about 5.8, 5.9 last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something like that. And that was on NBC last year. Daytona 500 this year, delayed by rain, was 6.9. All right. The Daytona 500 in the United States, when you judge not by the number of people in the grandstands, Indy's always going to win that fight. Okay, they sold out for the first time in 9 years at Indy, but Daytona 500, even though we're getting stale coverage from Fox, not promoted anywhere near the same way they're promoting Indy, all these other things, Indy 500 and Daytona 500 have within a few 100,000 of each other in terms of viewers. And that's just something to remember,
Yeah, but Doug, you have to understand that I'm going through, by the end of January, I'm going through withdrawals, and I'll go out in the yard and watch a herd of turtles race just to find something to race.
That's true. I mean, hey, that's true. Yeah, the Indy 500 is the second of 3 races on a Sunday, second of 3 rig races on a Sunday. That's a good point.
Yep, and also too, you got to understand that there aren't many other sports in play. No pun intended. There's not many other sports. There's not much else going on TV or streaming at that time either. And racing has been fortunate to be able to start seasons earlier and end seasons later, which helps their numbers.
Yes, but 100%. There are all sorts of factors into it, and I would love, nonetheless, to see Fox make NASCAR not cartoon drivers anymore and treat it with the gravitas that it is.
This is why I think that you could run more races per year instead of the 36 that we have. I think you could run more races in a given year and still have the number.
Respond
and
right
give those
here.
races to Prime.
Yeah,
absolutely. Really. Devin's into his final thought now. Yeah, we didn't go deep on the Prime coverage, except to say it was great to see a pre and post race. I'm going to let you cook on that, Devin, on your final thought, if you don't mind. Just to put it in perspective, though, again, Indy 500, I'm not debating the prestige of it. It's amazing, and I want to go to it sometime. All right, but I feel like people become prisoners of the moment of the Indy 500. And like I see even the NASCAR media trip it over itself, saying, yeah, but this is the greatest. It's like, yes, but NASCAR's biggest race gets roughly the same ratings as the biggest race in the world, in the United States, I mean. All right, now worldwide viewers, there are people in Sky Sports in Europe watching the Indy 500. They're not watching NASCAR. So I'm not debating that. Just in the United States, just remember there's still a ton of people that watch it and a ton of people that attend. And I don't know how many of those 350,000 people in Indianapolis on Sunday were in the snake pit and had no idea there was a race going on too. But it's still the biggest. I just want to perspectivize it. That's all. And I just made up a word. All right, Devin, I want you to cook real. Well, let's get into final thoughts here. We're already a buck 18 on the hour chart here. Devin, just you have so much to say about Prime, and it's better you talking about it than me. You were excited about it. There are similarities to NBC. I think NBC is helping with the production on Prime, because but Dev, what did you think about what you saw both in the media center? You already showed us earlier in the show in person what you saw at the stage.
Yeah, NBC I think is helping with production, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they might help with the Thursday night football production, because if you look at their score bug,
because they do Thursday night football, they used to, yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I think they might help out with the Prime because of the score bug looks very similar to NBC Sunday Night Football bug. But anyways, Prime did a very good job. It's very innovative and a breath of fresh air in NASCAR broadcasting that is needed. I feel like it made it feel like a big event. They actually had. When was the last time outside the Daytona 500 and the Peacock Pit Box does not count that a NASCAR race that they had a set at a NASCAR race? Now, there are a couple of one-offs that I can think of over the past 5 years, but it's been a long time. NBC used to do it when they
used to regularly do that, and they kind of they pared it back over the years. Fox had the Hollywood Hotel on the speed stage. It's been a while. Yeah, you got to wonder when you have only 5 races, you're just going to pull out all the stops and make everyone like it's the biggest thing ever instead of having 15 races. That's got to be it. I would love to see. I want to know how they measure the ratings for this.
I'll make a bold prediction. I could tell you they're not going. I don't even know if they released their Thursday night football ratings, because those are hard to get. The TNF ratings.
Come on, Adam Stern, let's go.
If I had to take a guess, and this is going to be a really low number, you probably had about 1.5 million people watching on Prime. If I had to take a guess,
Ooh, okay, all right.
that's at most. You probably had about 1 million to 1.5 million. It
Why
takes a
would it be?
while for the streaming audience to get over.
Okay, okay. Well, yeah, I
But
would.
that's still a big number for streaming, though. That's a big number for streaming.
Yeah,
It might not be that television number, but that's a big number still to have 1.5 million people tuned into a stream.
Yeah, but how many people have Prime already?
Well, that's the other thing too. I wasn't home. I didn't have access to a Fire Stick or anything. But did any of y'all see Coke 600 banners
yeah.
on the Amazon Fire Stick home
as soon as
screen?
you open Prime, it said at the top, "Watch Charlotte NASCAR here." Absolutely, it was not hard to find at all. But I have Prime Video, and how many people have Prime and don't realize it's Prime Video also and have it on your TV? I mean,
that's the other thing too.
There are 100 million Prime users or whatever. I think it's how is that 9-figure? Yeah, 9-figure number. There's like 100 million Prime users, but how many?
Oh, Mabel. Oh, darn, another race.
Yeah, that's. Hey, by the way, another thing on Prime, the Earnhardt documentary. I've watched the first 2 parts. Is absolutely fantastic. Must watch. Even people that got passed in the grass by Earnhardt should watch it. Tell your brother.
I didn't think it was a pice.
It wasn't. It was the block in the grass, but
it was a black in the grass.
A block in the chalk.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, one thing too. I don't like the turf in the infield at Charlotte. I feel like you need to be penalized. The car needs to get penalized in some sort of way going through the grass. It should just slide over the turf and you just drive away as if it's just a slick surface.
I mean, but the only people that got in there were ones that are already in a crash. I mean,
yes. What about Kyle Busch? What about Kyle Busch? There's something that happened, I think, at the end of stage 2. He just drove right through it.
All right, okay. Devin, let me ask you: Do you know who Willie T. Ribbs is?
Yeah. Yes, the name sounds very familiar. I've heard the name before.
I know exactly who that is, but why do you bring him up, Dan?
Okay, tell Devin, explain to him who Willie T. is.
Yeah, Willie T. Ribbs was a famous African American road racing driver whom Humpy Wheeler, I just realized what we didn't talk about this week. More on that in a second. We may have to do that next episode. NASCAR announces 2026 Hall of Fame inductees, Humpy Wheeler being one of them. Humpy Wheeler put together a deal, just like he did with Janet Guthrie, for Willie T. Ribbs to run, and I think it was the Coke 600, but one of the Charlotte races in the.
And I think it was 1986 is when I think it was.
Around there, yes. And sorry, I'm not pulling it up. We'll just go with us mid-'80s, all right? And Willie T. Ribbs got pulled over for doing like 120 miles an hour or something right before the race, and I think it didn't work out. But he ran a few NASCAR races, flamed out pretty much, and I mean, he had his reasons for thinking why he didn't get signed up for any more rides. But that's who Willie T. Ribbs was. And the reason it rings a bell with you, Devin, is because in 2021, when they did the Superstar Racing Experience, they brought Willie T. and 60 years old Willie T. Ribbs.
I remember that.
Those races there, and that did not go well either.
Now, I'm going to be Paul Harvey. This is the rest of the story. So I'm in the driver's meeting. Harold Kinder is officiating, and Willie T. Ribbs raises his hands, and he asked Harold Kinder if it was legal to pice in the grass in the tri-oval at Charlotte.
I remember
and
this.
Harold Kinder said it was legal to pice in the grass. So I'm not going to ban anyone from picing in the grass at Charlotte.
Now let me rephrase this. Not a penalty, but like not a penalty NASCAR would hand down to you, but a penalty that the surface would hand to you.
Well, and here's the deal. What is the difference between a 1986 NASCAR Winston Cup race car and the ones that they've had the last 15 years in Cup Series? Oh, I'll tell you, is that those cars had air under them, and they were up off of the ground. They looked like cars on the street. And so you could do the Dale Earnhardt block in the grass or the Willie T. Ribbs, whatever, and get away with it more. You don't go faster, but you could technically go. If you dig any of these cars, truck, Xfinity, Cup, ARCA, dig them into the grass, front splitter, front valence, digs right in, rips it off. Carl Edwards famously won the All-Star race. I think it was 2014, maybe 15. No, I think it was 2014. Goes through the burnout in the grass, runs over a storm grate, rips the front end off the car when he was driving the 99. So that's the difference. The penalty is there for sure. But that's why I think you had to do it, because you also have cars flipping and stuff. I don't know. I see what you're saying, Dev, but the grass ain't going to make it go faster, but I don't know that you need to wreck your race car for touching
Well,
it.
now, anytime I've ever wrecked, when I've went off of the asphalt onto the grass, I always speed up. So passing in the grass, it looks like you just speed up.
It's kind of like a Mario Kart or something, right? If you hit one of those
That's
little
it.
small things. Okay. Hey, so we'll talk next week about the Hall of Fame, because this was so chock full. And I'd love to hear Devin and Dan's thoughts on oh gosh, on Harry Gant, Kurt
Your
Busch. Sorry, that's
inductees
what
into the Hall of
Harry
Fame.
Gant hurt. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, your inductees into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, Harry Gant, Kurt Busch, Ray Hendrick, and then the landmark award there, or the Pioneer Award, excuse me, Humpy Wheeler. So, excuse me, let me say that again. Pioneer, there's the Pioneer one, that's Ray Hendrick, and then the landmark, Humpy Wheeler, for his contributions there. So that'll be all inducted in January, and we'll talk a little more. Apparently, the debate was very contentious when it came to Kurt Busch because of the off-track stuff more than anything on the track. On the track, I think he's undoubtedly a Hall of Famer. All right, so Devin's final weigh in there was on Prime. Dan, you got anything you want to throw on the log here before we go?
No, I think I've said enough. I think it's time to turn the light out and go home.
Yeah. And I appreciate y'all doing this here tonight, man, especially you, Devin, with all the driving. But Dan, you too. I know you got a lot going on.
Yeah, but I enjoy this at night better than I do the mornings.
Well, that's fair. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll need to make an adjustment. We'll see about that. Hey, one last thing here for me. I love 14 hours of racing. That was a great Sunday. I wouldn't want every Sunday to be that way. Thank God it worked out that I could do that. This is a little news story from the week, but I think it's cool for those of us that love the nostalgia, which is a lot of us. Okay. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to run a paint scheme very similar to the one that he won at Daytona with in 2001 in the summer race and the then Pepsi 400. It's going to be an MLB All-Star game scheme. They're going to have it on display at the Speedway Classic in August. So that's going to be that game in early August with the Braves versus the Reds. And then Dale Jr. is going to race that scheme a little bit later, Budweiser All-Star scheme in Anderson, South Carolina. Now, all of this is going to happen after the MLB All-Star game, but that is sure as heck going to sell some T-shirts and die-casts, so why not? But there you go. Props to Dale Jr., and there's Devin again waving Budweiser King of Beers. Props to Dale Jr. For running the scheme and for Budweiser getting back with him. So, yeah. But, boys, thanks for making this happen tonight. Maybe this will become an evening thing later. I don't know. Maybe we should shake it up. I know it's tough doing it so early in the morning there. That's the only way I can do with my work schedule. But maybe I'll just have to mess up my home life instead of my work life. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Maybe.
He said sounds good. Okay, great advice there from Dan, who's been married for 40 years. Okay, that's great. Anyway, no, thank you all for tuning in. I know this is a long episode. We had a lot of racing to cover. Next week, we will talk a little bit about the Hall of Famers, and we'll talk about, yes, the Cracker Barrel 400 in Nashville. And we didn't even do any preview of that race, but Joey Logano won it in like 5 overtimes a year ago. So you pretty much got that going for you there. But
I got free stuff from it. This Cracker Barrel deal is a big deal because the last 2 SMI tracks I've been at, I've received gift cards for Cracker Barrel, and I've received free meals for Cracker Barrel as well.
Hey, where'd you get that gift card, Dev?
I got it from you.
Yeah, that's right, man. Thanks to Brad Gillis.
But off a Cracker Barrel event.
Yes. Hey, but let's look real quickly here. There've been 4 Cup races. Hard to believe already 4. This is going to be number 5, really? Good Lord. They were won by Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, and Joey Logano. Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, Joey Logano. Could Ross Chastain do 2 in a row, boys? I don't know. He's never done that before. Maybe check that off the list. Or could Chase get back into victory lane for the first
He's done
time?
like 2 in 1 month, but that's about as close as he's gotten to something like that.
Do you remember who won the Xfinity race? Yes, he did the 2 in the 1 month in 2022, the Coda and Talladega. Remember who won the Xfinity race a year ago?
At Nashville?
Yeah. No one ever remembers Xfinity winners, so I don't expect.
Oh, gosh. It was Allgaier, wasn't it?
It was not. He won it 3 years ago.
Oh. Allmendinger was 2 years ago.
Yes. It was not a full-time Xfinity driver.
It wasn't a Cup driver.
It was a Cup driver. And I'm surprised he hasn't been in any Xfinity races this year that I remember anyway.
Oh, is it John Hunter Nemechek that won last year?
JHN. Gresham Motorsports Park alum, John Hunter Nemechek. How about that, huh?
Wow.
Next gen era. Let me put the last. I always like to go for that, even though it's been 4 races there. Let's eliminate 2021 from the equation. Denny Hamlin, best stats over the last 3 races, 2022, 3 and 4. And he's not won there. 2 top 10s. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Truex, Chastain, Bell, Wallace, Reddick, Logano, and Blaney, top 10 drivers in the next gen era at Nashville. So there you go. There's your extensive pre-race preview for Nashville.
Speaking of Chastain, I'm going to try to pull it up real quick for him. He had a really good stat line for Nashville Super Speedway. Finished top 5 or top 2 in the inaugural race. Then had another top 5 finish in the second race. Won the third one. I don't know what he did last year, but
well, let's see. I can tell you what he did last year. He's gotten 2 top 5s in the last 3 races. Last year he finished 33rd. He crashed. You know what? He crashed in one of those overtimes. I remember, if I remember correctly, he got turned around and all that business at the end of that race. So there you go.
You know what the unfortunate thing about this race weekend is this is the first time I've been to every Nashville Cup race, and I'm missing it this weekend.
Going all the way back into the first year of the Biden administration. Can you believe it? Devin Kupka has been. No, but that is incredible. I hate to see that string come to an end, but, man, you need to rest. Do you get rest this weekend?
Not a whole lot. I mean, a little bit. But sleeping in hotels is weird because the alarm doesn't wake you up. The sunlight wakes you up.
Well, I mean, that's why you close the curtains.
Well, yeah, you do close them, but I mean, still light gets in.
Oh, so, but wait, why aren't you resting this weekend? Look, sports.
Oh, this upcoming weekend? Oh, yes. I'll be resting. I'll be in a dark room because I'm going to be on vacation next week. So I go on vacation Saturday.
So Dan and I are joining you. Are we? Did you want us coming Saturday morning, or how did?
Saturday night. Saturday
night. Okay. You gonna have a couple of cold buds for us there waiting?
Yeah, we will. And we'll hit Flora-Bama as well. Great bar down there. Big bar.
I've heard about that. Okay.
Good My wife would be thrilled for me to do that.
What's that?
My wife would be thrilled for me to do that.
Just you.
Yeah, just me.
The 3Ds take on Flora-Bama.
The 3Ds. Oh, my gosh. 3Ds.
Hey, this goes back to road trip.
There you go. There you go. All right, look. Hey, next week's show, we're going to, of course, review everything in Nashville, preview what's coming ahead on the schedule there. And let's just take note. This is May the 26th as we record this. That means we are exactly a month away from Atlanta Motor Speedway race weekend, Quaker State 400. It is on, boys. And we'll have a little audio from Eric Jones to play a little bit later, maybe next week. You can listen to our full Eric Jones interview from a couple of weeks ago on all of the podcast platforms. Dan, Devin, thanks for joining. Y'all, thanks for hanging in over an hour and a half here and letting us exercise all of our racing excitement your way. I hope you had a good time. And, hey, little evening version of 5 to Go. Be sure to like the 5 to Go podcast Facebook page. Devin did an incredible job, as he always does, being at the track this weekend there. And we're proud of him and proud of what he did at UNG. And be sure, if you like this and know some people that like racing, that want a little bit something alternative to listen to, flip them the link and like and subscribe so you can get these episodes automatically in your inbox on whatever platform you're listening to it from. So for Dan Elliott, Devin Kupka, I'm Doug Turnbull. Salute our troops. Happy Memorial Day. And we'll catch you next week here on the 5 to Go podcast.